The hook for any speech is a story. The hook for any story is the conflict. Therefore, conflict is the hook for your speech. That's how important conflict is. Now, we're talking about storytelling here, and conflict is the hook to your story. So, as soon as you introduce your characters in a story, I mean right away, after you introduce your characters, you need to immediately throw them into a problem, into a conflict. Again, this has to happen right away, or you will lose your audience. See, most speakers have far too much what I call pre-ramble before getting to the conflict. So write this down. The quicker, the better. For example, I have a story where I say,
the number one thing is not what you think. I used to work for an internet company, and I wanted to go full-time into professional speaking. That's my goal. That's my dream. Raise your hand if you have a goal or a dream. Raise your hand if you want to do something in life. Yeah, me too. So I went to the vice president of this company, a young guy, new guy, and he looked like a young Pat Riley, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. And well, you're all interested. And I went to him, and I said, John, I'm going to be leaving. Give you as much transition time as you need, but I'm going to be leaving because it's always been my dream to be a full-time professional speaker. He said, that's your dream, Craig? I said, yes, it is. He said, well, that's great. I really admire you for having one, but you can't leave.
Now, that was the conflict. Okay? Right after I introduced him, I established the conflict. In your story, your job is to establish the conflict early. However, that's where most average speakers stop. That is, if they bother to establish the conflict at all, they stop after they establish it. But the job's not done. After you establish the conflict, you then must escalate it. See, that's what speakers are missing. Establishing the conflict is like the Titanic hitting the iceberg. That's a conflict. Escalating the conflict is like the water rising on the Titanic. I mean, think about it. If the water never rose on the Titanic, well, that would have been a terrible movie. But we need to get to the point where the water rises so much that something has to give. A decision has to be made. So let's go back to my story. I said to the vice president,
exactly. I said, what do you mean I can't leave? He said, because, Craig, we've been thinking about it, and we're going to raise your salary up to this. Now, salary means the same thing in California, right?
Yeah.
So I said, John, this is not a financial decision. This is about my dream. In fact, I call this a dream decision. He said, okay, I understand. I really do. Hey, but how about if we raise your salary up to this? Yeah, I said, this is not a financial decision. It's a dream. Do you know he raised it 4 times? I kid you not. He kept saying, well, raise your salary to this. I said, this is not a financial decision. This is a dream decision. He said, okay, Craig, how about if we raise your salary to well above 6 figures? I said, dreams are overrated.
Now stop. How did I escalate the conflict? How did I raise the water on the Titanic in my story? Every time he gave me a raise, I got more frustrated and yet more flattered. I got more and more confused until something had to give. So raising the salary each time was escalating the conflict. Once you establish your conflict, you need to ask yourself, how can I escalate this conflict to the point of desperation wherein something has to give? Now, because conflict is the hook to your story, you should always ask the following 2 questions as you craft your story. Number 1, how will I establish the conflict? And number 2, how will I escalate the conflict? In other words, how will I hit the iceberg, and how will I make the water rise on the Titanic in my story? So that's it for this week. Conflict is the hook. I'll talk to you next week, and until then, keep speaking up. Keep speaking up.